And it says we're live.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Welcome to Home Built Workshop. Welcome to
Wednesday Live. I hope your day, Wednesday, Thursday night, morning, whatever, I hope you're doing awesome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in, where we're going to hang out and chat for a while and just, in general, have a good time. Man, you guys are all here before me. Right on. Paul's here. Let's see. I can't even scroll all the way to the top. Why? Why won't it let me scroll? What's up with that? That's weird. Hang on. I'm going to have to fix this. Why won't it let me? I can't scroll all the way to the top.
But Mike's here.
Neptune's is here. Hang on, guys. This thing's acting weird. Why won't it scroll all the way up? Let's see. There we go, sort of. Mike says, good morning. Neptune's, good morning. Mike says, hey, hay fever? You got hay fever? Oh, no. Paul's here. Paul, good morning. Paul says, hello, all. Neptune says, LOL, how you doing? Good morning, everybody. Neptune's, hi, Paul. Mike says, ever notice the chat says say something? It does. It wants us to converse. What's going on? Mike says, back to the cave. Neptune's never leaves the caves. Stays in the dark. Harry Dude's here. What's up? How are we all? We're good, Harry Dude.
What's going on?
What is up? Dastardly Dave's here. So Dave says, sup all. Neptune says, hello, everyone. Man, right on, guys. Everybody turning out. Thank you. Thank you. Paul says, sitting at work, hoping no calls come in. Paul, I hope no calls come in for you, too. That way you don't have to leave us. Harry Dude says, that's why I turned the phone off. Right on. Don's here. Don says, howdy from Florida. Don, what's going on? Howdy from Colorado.
Paul says
He can't turn the phone off because he works dispatch during the live. Well, put it on silent. Then you just say, well, I was busy and didn't hear it. No, don't do that. I'm not recommending that. Really. Alrighty. Right on, guys. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And right off the bat, if you're tuned in, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Right on, right on. Well, while everybody's putting down there what you're working on, I'm going to tell you about my last few days. If you remember last week, I was still dealing with like that sinus, whatever it was. Man, I got hit by a truck on Friday. That whole nonsense turned into a pretty bad sinus infection. So I was a little bit out of commission for a few days because I just felt horrible. It was not fun. Had to like go to the doctor and get antibiotics, and oh man, it's kind of was under the weather for a few days, which wasn't great, but yeah, but I'm feeling much better. Still some residual stuff, but yeah, I'm overall I'm feeling much better and happy to be back working on my side bender, which we'll get to shortly. I think I showed it to everybody last week, and yeah, there was several days that it didn't get a whole lot done, but I'm wrapping it up right now. Already started editing the video, and hopefully that guy will be out this weekend. I'll show you where we're at here shortly. Dave says, my girlfriend explained the bridge you were using to train the horse. She had horses many moons ago. Yeah, right on. Yeah, it's just a practice obstacle, really. The horse my daughter rides, he's a rock star at pretty much whatever. He's been there, done that, been around the block, and well seasoned in that sort of thing. But it's always good to keep him in practice. And yeah, it's nothing super fancy, just a obstacle they gotta walk over, and it makes noise when they step on it, and yeah, it just helps them with their, I don't know, confidence and and all that.
Yeah, that was a fun
Project. If any of you haven't seen the video that went up this past weekend, I think I put it up Saturday. Just kind of a day in the life type of video. My daughter and I working on some stuff that needed to be worked on, just having some fun and getting some things done. We actually did that, I don't know, a week or so before, maybe 2 weeks before, when she was on fall break from school. And it was just a fun thing to do that needed to be done, and we got to hang out, and she was having fun running the camera, and just kind of a fun little project. But yeah, you can go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Not a how-to style video, just kind of what we're working on. And several people had said that they kind of liked that sort of thing, so I might try to do that a little bit more often, not every time or anything like that, but just maybe including some more things that we do outside of the shop. We're around here, we're always, probably like most of you, there's always something that needs to be fixed, something that needs to be, redone, repaired, and that's just one of the things that we have to do. I'm not always in the shop, although it would be nice. We're constantly working on other stuff. And I think it'd be kind of fun to include some of that outside the shop, or after hours projects or whatever you want to call it. But there's a couple other things that we have already identified that maybe we can tackle like that. Dave says she did have fun running the camera and getting the shots. Yeah, when we started out that project, I kind of was using the camera, and at one point, I'd handed it to her and, and asked her to film a certain thing, and she kind of just took it and ran with it, and it was kind of fun. So I just let her take the lead on that one, and I think she did a pretty good job. And with all the wind we were dealing with in that one, it was her idea. I showed her the different microphones, and let's try that one and see if it's better, and let's try the little wireless ones. And I got to use those more often because they worked out really well. So I'll probably be using those a little bit more. I might switch over to those even in here in the shop and see how that works. But yeah, that was fun. I always enjoy, working with my daughter and just tinkering on stuff like that, and hopefully she gets gets to learn a little bit along the way. Although I don't necessarily try to force the learning, but just by doing, learn by doing. Not that, who knows later on, right? I've talked about that before, and I think I've even done videos on that. We don't know where the kids are going to end up in, 10, 20, 30 years, but just knowing a few skills like that, I think is, it's never a bad thing. I'm hitting some buttons here. So yeah, that was a fun one. A little sip of coffee here, and I'll show you the side bender where we're at. I don't know if I can lift this thing. I got it mostly assembled with the bending mold in there. It's actually I might just turn the camera. Let's see. Oh, I don't know. We'll try it. Oh, it's heavy. The camera's too close right now. But anyway, here it is, mostly. A little awkward to hold. Most of the weight is this darn bending mold. Somebody built it out of solid MDF, and it's kind of heavy. I might have to drill some holes in it to kind of lighten it up a little bit. But here's where we're at on it. We've got I got to get a different angle. That's not going to work. Hang on, I'm gonna move you. Don't get motion sickness while I'm moving the camera. I'm gonna try here. It's still kind of close. I'm gonna try to scoot this back a little so that you can see it a little better. Maybe I can come over here and sit. Let's try this. It's kind of awkward, huh? Hey, that's not so bad. I can't reach the thing to see what is going on, but we'll switch back to it in a minute. So here's the bender, mostly. There's kind of two parts to it. So of course up here we've got the old press clamp, which I don't know why it's oddly satisfying to do that. So I've got my press block, or the waist block that I made in the video. I have a separate video where I made this mold. I think it was the binding video for the acoustic guitar build. I think it was the video that I made this mold, including this block, and we used it in my friend Matt's mold, or bender. So you put the mold in there, a little bender, the little waist block goes in here. I might make it so it attaches with magnets, but this way I can get it lined up. You'd put your sides in there, sandwiched with the heating blanket and some spring steel slats, and then you can crank this guy down. Almost runs out of travel, but not quite. I might have to increase the height of this block, but I don't think it's going to be an issue, at least not with this mold. So then that clamps the waist in there. Then you have this dealio here that is on some springs. That slides around and bends the ends over. And then for a mold like this that's not a cutaway, I've got another piece here that will get attached with the springs as well. And then that will just pull down and hold everything in place. This is just, it's just some 1-inch dowels. So that comes down, clamps that in place. And for a non-cutaway, maybe even a cutaway if you use the correct bending call, you could do everything with just these two gadgets. But if you have a cutaway, then we have a whole nother piece here. I don't know why that's so fun. This guy gets put in place with these little eye bolts on the front need to come out, and then you put some bolts in here, and then what happens is you'll have a different call for the cutaway. This thing will swing down to wherever you need it, and then with your cutaway call you can then crank it into place. Here on the front I have a connector for once you have your heating blanket in there, that plugs into there. On the back I have another plug. This is where your power is going to come in. You just plug a regular, these are just regular IEC, I think they're called IEC connectors. Plug that in there, plug that into the wall, and then all I used was a little timer, little clock spring type timers that you'd use for, I don't know, a bathroom fan or maybe a heat lamp or something like that. Turn that on, and only when you turn that on will it power this outlet. So it'll only turn the heat blanket on when you turn the timer on. So that way there's no way you can leave it on for, an hour or something or more, forget, and burn your place down. That'll shut it off at the most 30 minutes, which probably will burn up the heat blanket by then, but hopefully it won't burn the shop down. but yeah, it's just about done. There's just a couple little things that I need to do to really finish it up. I've got it done enough now where I can wrap up the video, but a couple other things. I didn't get enough of these springs, so I don't have the springs to hook this front piece on. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. This one was really fun for some reason to put together. It's kind of cool making the different mechanisms and pieces to make things slide and turn and move. I was really enjoying putting this one together. This one was pretty fun. Yeah. So that's my side bender. Mostly done. The other thing is, I'm waiting for some threaded inserts to be delivered. That way I can screw these in and it has an insert. This one is, the back ones are only held in with nuts right now, so I'm going to have to pull the top of the platform off to install those inserts. I don't want to have to do that. That's why I'm going to use the inserts. That way it's really easy to put things in. But yeah, pretty cool. I'm happy with the way it turned out. So I'm going to see if I can scoot you guys back a little bit closer here. Hang on. We're going for a ride. Buckle up. Now my seat's wiggly. Alrighty, now I'm coming back. Now I can get to comments here. Robert says, hello, I was waiting on the notification that did not come, but checked and here you are. Interesting. That is so weird, Robert. I don't know why. We got an it's cool. And my apologies again. You told me your name last week and I don't remember. Please tell me again. And I'll get it. Paul says, looks pretty cool. Auto shut-off timing circuit? Yes. Not the fancy temperature-controlled, PID controller, which eventually I will probably adapt this to. But right now, just trying to keep it simple. I wanted something that would turn off, so that's why I went with the little timer. At least then I know that it'll shut off and it won't just sit there and burn everything to pieces. A friend of mine uses the same type of control for that, and it's worked fine. He's done dozens of guitars that way, so I'm pretty confident that it's going to work out for me as well. What we'll use as a heat source, I am using this heating blanket here. This is it's a 120 volt 1035 watt heating blanket. This has an IEC connector on the end. I did test this out just plugging it into a power cord for about 10 seconds and it got really hot in a very, very short time. So my timer, I won't need to turn it very far, maybe 5 minutes if that, to get everything up to temperature. And yeah, this is what I'm going to use. There's tons of different designs out there. I've seen them done with light bulbs, these blankets. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. For me, I thought about the light bulb one, and yeah, there's just something I'm not super comfortable with all the light bulbs, hot light bulbs in there. Because they're kind of hidden inside, not hidden, but they're tucked inside the housing, and I don't know. It's just something about it that has me a little leery. Now I know a bunch of people do it, and it works, as far as I know, just fine. But I feel a little more comfortable using the heating blanket myself. But that's the plan. Robert says, it looks well made at least. He says, yeah, that works. I can see it better now. Yeah, I mean, it turned out great. I looked at a bunch of different designs and plans for this thing, and I didn't use any particular plan. I did use some dimensions and things from some of the plans, but really, some of the styling came from some of the plans that I looked at. But really, I drew everything up myself, using those other ones kind of as reference, and cut it out. On the CNC, the curved stuff was cut out on the CNC, and everything else was cut on the table saw. Just square blocking and stuff.
Mike says, whoa,
I'm getting dizzy. Please explain the electric side and timer. Sure. If I didn't already cover it when I was explaining everything. So there's an IEC plug connector on the back. right? So you can just use a standard power cable like this. I robbed this one from my guitar pedal board just as a test. I know I've got extras of these around, but I can't find them. So, so this guy will plug into the back. That's going to bring power into the unit. From there, the power goes to the timer, where it my mind went blank. Where it interrupts the hot, the hot leg, and from there, as soon as you turn on the timer, it sends the power out to the other plug, which is where this plugs in. So this is not energized. The plug that this goes into is not energized until you turn on the timer. It's really pretty simple, but it works, and it puts a timer into the circuit so that there's no way that I can just turn the thing on. The input power, where I plug the power cord into, the IEC plug for that is fused. So a little bit of extra protection, maybe something, I don't know, something gets hot and starts to short out. It should blow the fuse and, stop everything basically. But so I've got a fused input connector, runs to the timer. Timer turns on the output plug, which causes the heating blanket to warm up. So really simple. There's no on and off switch other than the timer. The timer is the on-off switch. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that if you're going to build one of these, just be careful. Understand what you're doing, and just be safe. Do your wiring. Don't leave out grounds and all that sort of stuff. I am not an electrician, so I did not go into depth with wiring that because, just almost want everybody to know that you need to understand it yourself so that you can do things safely. And if you're not comfortable, then you can, have somebody help you or something like that. Just be careful when you're working with electricity and, don't zap yourself. I always try to use fuses and, stuff like that as little safety, little extra safety on that. So, Mike, I hope that helps. Let's see. It says I made a similar one, but it doesn't have slide slot, so unstable. Oh, I know what you mean. I struggled with this for a minute, and I'll explain why. So I believe you're talking about this slot right here, so that the block keeps it straight. At first, I wasn't sure how I was gonna do that. I knew that a lot of these had a slot in there, but until I actually made this, I didn't fully understand what it does. The slot really is only there to keep everything nice and straight. Yeah, so I get it. I could see that. If you didn't have a slot in there to keep the press block or whatever, that's what I'm calling it, nice and straight, yeah, I could totally see how it wouldn't be all that stable. I guess unless you had a giant screw that had enough surface area here to keep it straight. But yeah, I definitely would recommend some slots like this. I also had a bunch of different ways. You guys can't really see that. Let me crank this up a little because that's fun. I don't know why it's so fun. At first, I wasn't thinking of putting in this tenon, I guess. I was going to use some bolts through here into this block and use the bolts as a guide. But then I got to thinking that I'm overthinking the whole thing and just make a wooden tenon that rides in there. And there's no need for any sort of extra bolts or something like that. As long as you cut your tenon centered, your block's going to be centered. And yeah, it worked out really good. I did have to take a little bit of candle wax and kind of rub in here because it was binding a little bit at first. But now it works great. I also put a little drop of oil down in here, and that seemed to make everything nice and smooth. Oh, somebody forgot to finish tightening these screws. Guess I better do that. Sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to make you dizzy. Paul says, understand you went with a heating blanket because not convincing could get you to see the light. I didn't want to see the light. Yeah, there's just something about the light bulb thing that I'm not crazy about. I don't know. I don't know if it's, there's a ever so slight chance of, I don't know, dropping something. You'd have to have the bottom open, and mine. Let me see if I can take this mold out of here and show you. Mine, the bottom is completely closed in, which encloses all the electronics, which there's not a lot, but and it also just gives a nice solid platform. Let's see if I can get this spring thing off of here without springing myself in the face. Ooh. I'm not sure about these springs either. They're a little stiff. Come on, spring. This is where all the weight is. So I still got a spring kind of dangling, but you can see the bottom here is just a flat platform, and I like that because it gives a good, sturdy, solid base for the bending mold. Now I know that bending mold is going to have absolutely zero flex. I probably could have just supported it on either end and it would have been just fine, but yeah, I just didn't want to have didn't want to have it open to where I could drop something on the hot light bulbs and then hot glass flies in my eyes, and I'm over dramatizing it, but anyway, I like the heating blanket better myself.
Robert says, can you put in
Some kind of circuit to control the amount of heat it puts out for the heating element? Yes, you can. There are controllers. It's called a PID controller. I don't know what that stands for, so if you guys know, let me know. But it uses a temperature probe, so you set your max temperature, and the probe monitors the temperature of the heating blanket, and it turns it on and off to regulate the heat. That would be ideal, and ultimately that's the way I would like to have this. But there's a couple things that I'm trying to figure out for that a little bit better. Currently, when you have that sort of system, you have the probe, and it's not fixed, right? So it's not fixed to anything. So you have to insert it in between your sandwich of sides and the bending blanket and all of that. So you have to sandwich that in there, and then you do your bending. And the sandwiching, while I understand that it works just fine, there's something about that I'm not crazy about either. So I'm trying to figure out if I can think of a better way to do that. If not, it's not a big deal. At some point, I will probably convert this to the temperature controlled deal. But I know for a fact that this works fine using the timer. You just have to, you kind of have to monitor it a little bit with like one of those temperature gun things. A friend of mine does this exact same thing with his, and he gets great results with it. So I know this will work for now. Ultimately, like I said, I do probably see myself changing this over to a temperature controller sort of deal, and but for now, it's good. I'm happy with it, but yes, there are ways to do that. And Ivan's here. Ivan says good evening. Ivan, what's going on, man? How are you doing? Tell everyone hi over there.
Mike says,
I saw one of these on Jason Beam's site that he used dowels and many rubber bands to hold the heating blanket to the form. As long as you don't have gaps develop, then you're good. Dowels and rubber bands.
Interesting.
I don't. Let's see if I can get this more. technically, if you wanted to get technical, right, I could use just this mold to do the bending.
I could, using the heating blanket, this, and a bunch of clamps.
If I drilled maybe more holes around here so that you could clamp blocks in place, you could use this to do all of the bending. You don't need a fancy bender. You do need a mold of some sort to get your shape to, but you can heat your piece up using the heating blanket and just start clamping things in place around there. I've seen people do that too. But there's just something I like about the bender, the clampy thing and all that. It's just kind of fun. But I've seen people do that, and using a bunch of clamps. I could even see rubber bands, like inner tubes, where you just start wrapping it around. I could see that. Maybe that's the sort of thing. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, you could do all of it with just this mold. The next mold I make, though, is guaranteed not going to be out of a solid 6-inch width of MDF. The thing is way too heavy and way overbuilt, as we tend to do around here.
Paul says you build
Your
your
molds for it with metal tops to conduct heat, and they are not solid, so they sit inside the molds. Oh, it's got metal. Interesting. Yeah, you definitely, with the light bulb one, I can totally see how you'd have to build the mold specifically for that style. Paul says just make them double walled strong enough. I can see that after making this one. Senpakin says, hey, good morning, late again. No worries, Rick. How are you doing this fine Wednesday morning? Paul says, I've done blanket and bulbs. Both work fine, but blanket method uses more materials for mold.
I could see that, I
Think.
It doesn't have to be solid.
A friend of mine I know uses the same method. He doesn't build his mold solid. He'll use a piece of MDF on the outside and have one or two on the inside with some blocking, and his work super good. So there's a bunch of different ways you could do the mold. I know that for a fact. Harry Dude says, can you run it on a dimmer to lower the temp?
That's a good question.
I don't know. It wouldn't be hard to add a dimmer to this. I'd have to add another box, but
That might be worth
an experiment. I don't know. What would happen if you put a dimmer on a heating element? Would it still heat?
That's a good question.
I got to think about that. I don't think it would hurt the element, would it? Because I could even build a little inline type box to test. Just get make a little enclosure and put a dimmer in it, and
before hacking something
into the side of this. Harry Dude, that's a good idea.
I don't know.
Doesn't hurt a light bulb. Would it hurt a blanket?
Huh. I don't know.
I got to think about that. Robert says also if you had used a bulb, you'd probably have needed to hollow out the mold to get to the heat area. Yes, exactly. That's what Paul was saying. Kind of build the mold to work with that style. And I didn't want to have to rebuild this mold if I didn't have to.
Would have made it weaker.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. But if you build it right, it would totally work. But yeah, I didn't want to have to rework my mold. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to go with the heat blanket style.
Mike says I may have that wrong. Never mind.
Okay, I forgot all about what you said. No, I really didn't. But poof, I've never minded. Good album too. Robert says the way you build this bender has made it more automatic to get the correct shape. Kind of, there's. I mean, that's kind of the point of the bender, really. It's not really just the way I built mine specifically. It's just kind of the way the bender works. The waist presses down in the center, and then everything clamps down around it. That's just, that's the cool thing about the bender, and why I wanted to build one, because it does. As long as you build your mold, it's going to bend it to your mold. Charlie says, do you have to be concerned with springback after removing from the mold? If so, how do you compensate for that? Charlie, the answer to that question is yes, you do. My mold is undersized from the actual size of the guitar I probably should have gone a little bit more, but it is offset by the thickness of the sides. So you're actually bending it a teensy bit smaller than the finished size. Not by much. Like I said, I probably should have made it a little bit more so it overbends a little bit more. But yes, so when you bend one side, now I've only done this once, so I'm not like the expert totally on that. When I built my acoustic was the only time I have ever bent sides, and my friend Matt was helping me. So how this will work is you bend one side at a time. You put that in there, turn it on, and when it gets up to temperature, which is really going to take like only a few minutes, and you're going to get everything clamped down. Then you shut off the power. At least this is how I'm going to do it. The timer will shut off, and then I'm going to let it cool for a little bit in the mold. And then when you take it out of the mold, it's going to get clamped right into my outer mold that I do a lot of the assembly work in. So you go right from this, clamp it with blocks to keep it in the shape of the mold while you bend the second side. Then you bend the second side the exact same way, clamp that in the other side of your mold, and then from there, I would let it sit probably overnight while everything kind of dries, because you're going to spritz it with some water in most cases. But yes, I say always, but I've done this once. You're going to get a little spring back. I know we did when we bent the sides on my acoustic. And it is something that I tried to compensate for in the mold by making it just a little smaller. I didn't make it the finished size. I made it just a little smaller by about the thickness of the sides. So you're just slightly overbending. If I was going to make another mold, I would probably add another, I don't know, maybe double that thickness or thereabouts, so that it overbends a little bit even more so. I hope I'm not rambling on about that, but yeah, I tried to compensate with the actual mold that goes in the bender, and then once you take it out, it gets clamped in the outer mold where it can kind of cure. Neptune says, don't think you can. Most dimmers are 600 watts, unless the blanket's less than 600 watts. No, it is 1,000 watts. Yeah, 1,035 watts. So I guess if you found a dimmer that would support that sort of watts, maybe you could. I'll have to look and see. Adalo! Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I'll get it. Dallo says, actually, I bet my sides with Steambox last week, and they still have strong spring back, so it's not easy to get out of the mold. I should get some kind of heating blanket or something. Now, I have not done, I've never bent by steam bending a guitar side. I've only done one or two little things. I'm trying to think what maybe you could do. Maybe you could try bending it just a little more. Maybe next time around you might not want to go back in and do it, but maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe you could bend it just a little bit more so that you're kind of accounting for the spring back. But like I said, I know when we take it off of this mold, it's going to get clamped right into my outer mold to kind of help retain that shape. And I mean clamped really good. to really lock that sucker in there. I want to have, I would like to see no gaps all the way around. I want it to see fitting that mold, you know, as perfect as possible, you know, as close as I can get it. But I know springback is going to be a thing. But, you know, I think really the only or the best solution is really just to overbend it a little more to kind of account for some of that springback. You know, you definitely want to try to minimize how much springback you get, right? Because if you have a ton and you have to force it into the mold, when you attach your top and back, you're building that tension into the sides. And you want to try to minimize building that tension into the sides, because later on down the road, that tension has the potential to, you know, the tension wants to go somewhere, and it could possibly try to spring your sides back. So I definitely, you know, experiment a little bit, try to overbend it, try to get as much out. A little bit's okay, from my understanding. And the guitar that I built, you know, that I put together last year, that one had a little bit of springback that is in there, but it's not excessive. At least that's what my friend Matt told me. He was kind of my helper along the way with answering a lot of questions. He said, you know, a little bit is going to be fine, but you want to try to eliminate as much as you can. And the only thing I can think of is by overbending a little bit. Hope that makes sense. Let's see. So Dello, I hope that helps. Don says you can buy a 10 amp potentiometer that should work to adjust the temperature as long as your heating pad will support it. Yeah, that's what I'll have to check. I'm gonna have to look at some ratings on that, because that is definitely a good idea. Don's got some math going on there. I'm not even gonna try to understand that, or even pretend that I understand that. Dallas says, sadly, my jigs and molds are designed to be 1-to-1, so maybe it could cause more springback. Regretting it now. That's possible, Dallo. If you built it, if the outside of your mold is the exact size of the outside of your guitar, that might be where you're getting a lot of springback from. And I guess it really wouldn't. I mean, it's sort of springback, but you're going to have tension for sure, because if the outside, hold on, let me see if I can make sense of this. So if this is the outside size, and my sides are, I don't know, 90 thousandths thick, I'm just using that number, and you bend it to fit this, right? You pull it off of this mold, and now you put it into your outside mold, your outer mold. Well, this is bent to fit the exact shape of the outside mold, but you need it to sit on the inside. So it really does need to be, 90 thousandths at least smaller, or maybe even a little more than that, because now you're having to force. What do I have? Now you're trying to, if you got think of a cardboard tube. I had one around here. Here, I don't know if this will make any sense or not. But let's say, this diameter, let's just say, is 3/4 of an inch. I have a 3/4 inch pipe, another piece that I want to fit inside. Well, it's not going to fit because it's the same size as the outer, right? So you'd have to crush it to get it to fit in there. And the guitar side, if it's bent, if your mold is the exact outside shape, now you're having to crunch that side to get it to fit in your mold. I hope that makes sense. So maybe you might want to think about either reshaping your mold, or possibly making a new mold. It sounds like, if I'm understanding, I think that might help you out quite a bit if you make your mold smaller, because once you put the side on there, now that is what makes your that makes your final shape. So you might want to knock together a new bending mold. So Dello, I hope that helps. Don says, sorry, formula's a little jumbled. No, that's my brain, buddy. Henry's here. Henry says, morning, electrical engineer here. What's with all this electronics talk going on today? And how can I help? Right on, Henry. We were talking about... Ugh, I gotta set this thing down. We were talking about ways to control the heat on a heating blanket. I was on my side bender jig. I've got it wired to a timer, you know, like a bathroom fan timer sort of thing. That will turn this on, you know, for a certain length of time. But Harry Dude had a good idea and said, hey, can you put a dimmer on there to control the temperature of this? And I don't know the answer, so we were kind of brainstorming around that. This is a 1035 watt heating blanket. So we were discussing the options of finding a dimmer that would handle 1035 watts. And I don't know. Can you even do that? Will a dimmer control, will reducing the voltage or whatever it does make the temperature lower?
Paul says, not
To overcomplicate things, but Matthias built a ukulele and went in and adjusted his mold so that it eliminated most of the springback. Yes, I 100% believe that if you get the proper radius on your initial mold and bends, your most of your springback is going to be gone. Yeah. Robert says, I wonder how they bend the sides of Padauk guitar. I watched someone trying to bend some Padauk for the binding, and the heat of trying to bend it really bleached the color out of it. Well, my first guitar is Padauk. It's Padauk sides, and it bent 100% just fine. You know, we didn't do anything different than you would on any other sides. Spritz with water, wrapped it in aluminum foil, made the sandwich with the heating blanket in two spring steel slats, which is exactly what I have for this bender, and it worked great. You know, we monitored the temperature, little temperature gun reader thingy, and yeah, we didn't have any discoloration, no bleaching of the color, and it worked great. So that's a question I can 100% speak to, because mine's made out of Padauk. The sides, not the binding. The whole side is Padauk.
Paul says,
I've done a Padauk guitar, put the sides into a steam box for over an hour before putting it into the bending mold to reduce the possibility of cracking.
Robert says,
is it possible that because the person was using a heating iron that heated the wood up too much and that caused the issue with the color going away? Paul says heat definitely affects the color of the wood. Take Padauk, for example. Heat brings out purple, so that's a possibility. Yeah, that's a possibility. I can say that I know on mine, I had no issues with the color. We used a heating blanket, a setup very, very, very similar to what I have just finished building, and it worked great. You know, that we had no issues. I was very careful when clamping it in the mold that anything hanging outside of the mold is also well supported to avoid any extra cracking or anything like that. But it worked just fine. Don says, you're going to play some guitar for us. You know, if I brought one out here, I would love to play some for you. Maybe we'll have to do that in another one. In another live. But I would love to. I just didn't bring it out here with me. Harry Dude says, dimmers don't alter the amount of voltage, just cut up the AC sine wave to reduce the power of each AC cycle. Ah, see, I don't, I'm not the expert on that. But I have friends, and that's all of you, points at everybody. I have friends who are, so. I know just enough electrical stuff to, to wire and troubleshoot a guitar, to wire a couple outlets in a timer. But other than that, I mean, I could replace an outlet at the house and that sort of thing. But yeah, I am not an electrician, and I will offer my input. But I would say if you're not comfortable doing it, get somebody to help you. Hire an electrician or something like that. I don't want anybody to get hurt because you took my advice or something. But just want to be very clear. Be safe. Let's see. And David's here. David's got the super chat. Right on, man. David, how are you doing this fine Wednesday morning? Paul says, meant to take Purple Heart. He brings out the purple. That darn dispatch distracting you. Yes, Purple Heart's kind of weird. Yeah, right on, David. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. And yeah, be looking for your box. Should be 2 days, I think. 3 days. I'm excited. Pete says, if you want to get a certain temperature and not go much above it, I think that an AC-rated solid-state relay would work with a small Arduino reading a temperature sensor to control it. Oh, man, Pete. That's actually a cool idea. You know, they sell those PID controllers, temperature controllers. You can find some of the imported ones fairly inexpensive, but something like an Arduino would be kind of a fun project. I know nothing about an Arduino. Yeah, something like that would be kind of cool. It's reading a sensor. Now, I'm going to throw this out here to you guys, because I can't come up with a good method here. One of the things, I'm going to grab this. Oh, I just kicked you. Are you guys okay? Sorry about that. One of the reasons I don't like the temperature probe deal is it just seems a little bit clunky to me. So I was trying to come up with a way that, you know, what do you think, or what devices are you aware of? I would like to see some sort of a temperature sensor that I could mount right, you know, like right in the waist, and mount one up here and mount one here, sort of thing. And that way, you know, maybe there's a plug on the side. You know, maybe obviously I'd have to build a new mold or something. But something that I didn't have to put the probe, actually do something with the probe. You know, you just make whatever connection and it works. I've seen some, I think they're like an infrared temperature sensor. I didn't look too much into it yet, but I'm wondering if you could mount something, you know, right into the mold, or maybe even on the bender somewhere where it's reading the temperature somehow. Now I get why the probe works, because you're sandwiching the probe in between the side and the blanket, right? So it's monitoring the exact temperature of the side. So you'd have some obstructions if you had some sort of a sensor, but I just think the sensor would be so much cooler than having to mess with the probe. You guys aware of anything like that? Does that make sense? You know, think of like if you're making a turkey in your oven, right? And you got to jam the meat thermometer in there, you know, to check the temperature. It's kind of like that with the sides. You got to put the probe in between the side and the bender. But I don't like the probe idea. So I'm trying to think of some other way to monitor that temperature. I don't know. I just thought I'd ask you guys, and you guys are full of awesome ideas and are familiar with a lot of things that I'm not. David says, pretty good, brother. Right on, man. I'm glad to hear it. Henry says, oh, I see. A heating blanket's very similar to a space heater electrically. So think of a space heater with a knob to make it less hot. Some even have a switch to reduce it to half the wattage.
So how would you do that with a heating blanket?
Because that'd be kind of cool too if you had like a high and a low switch.
Robert says, yeah, I
Forgot it. That was the wood you used for your guitar. The person trying to make the binding was doing direct contact to the iron, so that may have just gotten it too hot and too dry. Now that's a possibility too. I've seen people burn the sides using a hot iron, a heat pipe or whatever. So that could be. David says, cannot wait. I know. I'm excited. I'm excited too. Henry says, so you'll need a way to limit the current. You can get a control unit to limit this, or you could go and get a heat blanket that already has one. Well, I'm not aware, honestly, of any of the blankets that have one already on it, this style of blanket. Now, I just saw another one too. I'm going to get to that. I'll get back to you in a second, Henry. Paul says, got to go. Have a great week. Right on, Paul. Have a good one, man.
thought I saw.
Well, anyway, most of these setups are wired up with the PID controller and the temperature probes. I would say that's the most common way when somebody's using a controller. That's the style controller it is. I'm just trying to think a little further ahead on that and come up with something a little bit better. And at the moment, I don't have a great solution. That's why, but I've been pondering ideas like, can I put a sensor in the mold or something like that?
I just didn't want to go that
route yet. I might end up just doing it. If I can't come up with something better, then I will just install a PID in this unit and roll with it. Neptune says if you use the Arduino, you can put a temperature sensor on it. Yes, but I'm trying to figure out. Oh, Neptune says they have IR heat sensors. I wonder what their sensitivity or how close it has to be to the thing. Harry Dude says you can get fixed temp AC temp sensors that will switch off at a predetermined temperature. Very common on old PV solid state amps mounted to the heat sink for the power transistors. Neptune says I was looking at sensors last night for my hydroponics. Harry Dude says heat sensor would be cooler. Words to live by. I didn't even catch that. Good one. It would be cooler. It would be. Yeah, Neptunes, I saw the some IR sensors yesterday as well. I was browsing around the old McMaster car, the world's best hardware store. Not a sponsor. It should be. But I saw some on there, some infrared heat sensors, and I got to dive into some of the specs on that and see if something like that would work. Don says, search Amazon for the following silicone heating pad. That one has a temp controller. Oh, for guitar side bending. I will have to check that out. Because I have not seen one. 91 centimeters. How big is that?
15.
That's not long enough.
No, it is. It is.
I take that back. I was thinking millimeters.
Ivan,
brother, if you're still on there, these things are incredible. I love these. What, a couple years ago, I think it was? Ivan had sent me these awesome rules.
And these things are great. These are all metric. It was shortly after I did
The metric video. We talked about the metric video yesterday. I got a piece of tape on there. That was from measurements from the acoustic guitar. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out. 91 centimeters, that's long enough. Interesting.
Robert says,
Have a good one to Paul. Right on. Henry says, I see. Hope that makes sense, Henry. I'm just trying to, we're just brainstorming some different ways of accomplishing, temperature control. What's that? Who knows? So on my side bender right now, I just have a timer. One of these little clock spring timers, which turns on the output that goes to my heating blanket. And we were talking about, ideally having a temperature controller is, I think, better than just a timer. But, I kind of would like to find out a different way of, or maybe a better way of doing what most people do.
Sam Packin says, I
Didn't want to interrupt your flow and your bending and heating talk, but thanks for your help yesterday. I removed the fretboard and I'll make a new one. I have to get back at it. Have a good one. Right on, Rick. No problem, man. Yeah, save that old one though, because you could use that for, for a shorter scale guitar. Yeah, there's no reason you can't. You just shift everything up and it'll be a shorter scale length. So. Rick had sent me a message, just so you guys know what we're talking about really quick. Rick had made a fretboard, and instead of cutting it off at the nut, it had a little bit of a mistake, and it got cut off short. So I said, well, just make your first fret slot now where the nut slot is, move everything up, so your 12th fret becomes the 13th fret, and then you could build the project he's working on. And it'll just be a shorter scale length. But ultimately, we decided to just save that for another project because he's been building it for a customer. Rick's still here. So he's redoing it. But my first suggestion was, like I said, just move everything up a fret, and as long as you intonate it at the right, you set your bridge at the right spot, everything else is going to work. It's just going to be a shorter scale length. But the project he's working on, he's remaking it for the customer. But kind of an interesting way of creating a new scale length. Just cut the first fret off and then move everything up. Now you got a shorter scale length. How many of you done that before? I haven't, but I might try it. Robert says, for now, I'm sure that the timer will work and it will allow you time to figure out a different way to control the heat. Robert, you are spot on, and that is exactly the thought that went into my brain. I want to get it working. I use the timer. I'll monitor the temperature very carefully, and until I can ponder this thing. I wanted to just go super simple for now while I ponder the situation and see exactly, or see if I can come up with something different.
Oh, Wendy!
That's what it says, Wendy. Hey, morning. It says morning, Jeff. Good morning. How are you doing? Oh, we were talking about this the other day. Let me show you real quick. Ugh. I've had it all together earlier, but we were talking about different things, and I've since disassembled some of it. But yeah, I got the side bender pretty well done. We got these little deals that we'll go on here and bend the ends around. A little press block in here. That's super satisfying. I don't even know. I don't know why. I guess it's gonna be out here all afternoon doing that. but yeah, it's pretty well done. And I have a, see if I can grab it. I've got another one that I've made. If I can show this without dropping or falling over here. This guy is optional. He can go on the front. So if I'm doing a cutaway, then this can swing down there wherever it needs to, and clamp the cutaway in place. For a non-cutaway, I'll just use these little clamping things to bend it around. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked with the way it turned out. This was a fun one to put together. I don't know why. Just building the clamping deals and all that. And we can, like, I don't know, squash watermelons or something in there for board. But yeah, it's going to be cool. Oh, I want to show you guys really quick though. I know we are after the hour and you know, about time to wrap this up, but I want to show you these little screws that I use to put this bender together. When he says the baker bender. Ow, my head in there. I want to show you these little things. I don't know if you guys have ever used these or not. They're regular. The box says tiny head finish screws. Have you ever used these little things? Look at those. Look at that little teeny head on that thing. I use these to put this together with because I didn't want to, you know, like risk splitting any of the wood. But these look super cool. Really nice and neat. You know, I just drive them in really slow with the impact driver, so it's just below the surface. These little things work pretty cool. Now, I haven't fully tested them. You know, I don't know if you have, I'm guessing you have a much less holding power of the head. So you got to kind of take that into consideration. But if you've never used these are great for, you know, I used them in, you know, this is only 1/2-inch plywood that I used for this. So, but these little things worked super good. And it looks nice and tidy and neat. I just put a little more in than I would normally use if I was using larger screws, but I didn't want to have the material split out. So I got these little guys and they work incredible. I got to keep some of these around at all times for, you never know. It's even got like a kind of a drill point, if you can see that. I still pre-drilled holes for these, but I'm almost thinking you might not need to. I don't know. But if you haven't tried them, they make these screws with teensy heads, and they worked great. Wendy says, like those. Yeah, man, this is the first time I ever used them was for this side bender. Again, because I didn't want to split, you know, the 1/2-inch ply. And yeah, they worked awesome. Scott says, those screws work great in a lot of places. In the stairs of my house, the pin nails the carpenter used kept working their way out. Replace the pin nails with those screws, small holes. Yeah, they worked. Like I said, again, this is the first time I used them. And they worked really good. If I can show you. Like if you're careful with putting them in, I mean, it looks super clean. You know, I got a couple of them that, you know, especially the first few, I wasn't really sure, and like I just buzzed the screw in there, and it pulled, you know, pulled everything through quite a bit. But once I got the hang of it, I just put the driver on super slow and just let it real slowly come in, and yeah, they worked out really good. Yeah, this thing's held together with just those screws. There's no glue on this because I didn't know if I'd have to modify things, and I mean, there's no wiggle in any of it. So I got to give those tiny head screws a big old thumbs up. Dallas says, I like its color especially. The screws? Yeah, kind of a green. It's kind of a cool color. Right on. Well, guys, we need to wrap this up. I got to get back to work. I'm going to get back to editing. I'm waiting on a couple things to show up. Should be tomorrow for this. So I can just put a couple final touches on it. And yeah. So we're going to wrap this up. Robert says, I just noticed the rack that holds your router bits. Looks real neat. Oh, back here? Yeah. I did that in a video. Just a live edge scrap of elm with some 3D printed router bit holders. They hold the 1/4-inch and 1/2-inch shank. I just drilled random holes. Just so it looked kind of scattered a little bit, but yeah, I just keep them there. It's not the ideal spot for me to keep them. You know, I'd like to have it in a different spot, but it's really not that big a deal. But yeah, there's a video on that. If you have to scroll back probably, but I did do a video on that one. Just kind of a cool little fun project. I think that's one where I spilled a whole lot of colored epoxy on my tabletop here. Wendy says, see ya. Right on, right on. We'll catch you later. Don says, fun talk. Have a great day. Right on, Don. Robert says, yeah, he's talking about that. Yeah, go check it out, Robert. You have to scroll back. I can't tell you exactly where that video is because I don't remember, but there is a video on making that little thing. So, right on, guys. Well, yeah, this was a good one. This was awesome. And always my pleasure to chat with you guys and hang out. And thank you for taking some time out of your day to hang out here and talk about stuff, heating blankets and all that. So, you guys have an awesome remainder to your week, and be on the lookout for this video for the side bender coming out this weekend, unless I get the sinus infection again. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button on your way out. We'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay well, get on your shops, build some cool stuff. Dallo says, thank you. We got some ideas for my next bending. Therefore, have a good day. Right on, Dallo. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time. There goes that button thing again.